Okay. So, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from today. Welcome to today's Informative Friday session, Laying the Groundwork, Key Considerations for a Successful Implementation. And that's being presented today by Diane Street. My name is Molly Velasco. I'll be helping moderate the session today. Please be aware that the session is being recorded. Quick logistical information before we get started. Please use the chat feature to ask any questions throughout the presentation, and we will be sure to address them. There will be a Q&A session at the end where you can come off mute and ask questions, but we ask that you please use the chat feature for questions during the presentation. At the end, when we're in the Q&A, I highly encourage you to take advantage of that time with our consultant today and come off mute and interact. Makes it more fun for everybody, including our consultant. So I encourage you to do that. A copy of the presentation and a link to the recording will be sent to all registrants. If you're not a registrant and you would like a copy, please send me, Molly Velasco, an email and I will include you on the distribution. And I will drop my email in the chat shortly so that you have it. So on the next slide, just hopefully you're a little bit familiar with Nordic and Nordic ERP services. If not, I just wanted to provide a brief background on who we are and what we do. So Nordic provides a broad range of consulting services, including strategic advisory, digital and cloud initiatives, implementation and support, as well as managed services. In partnership with our clients, we help solve complex IT challenges to help make technology more useful and more beneficial to your business. And then specifically about ERP, if you're thinking about moving to the cloud or if you're going through an ERP selection process, Nordic's advisory service offers unbiased ERP reviews and selection services. We can help you identify the benefits of moving into a cloud ERP solution, manage the selection process, and measure the results. If you've already made the decision to move to the cloud, Nordic's prescriptive implementation approach will ensure you follow a best practice approach and get the most out of your software for the least cost in the quickest amount of time. And for organizations that have already made the move to the cloud at about 6 months after go live and every year thereafter, we recommend that you have Nordic perform an optimization assessment to make sure you've realized the value of the implementation and are taking advantage of the new features that are being added semi-annually. Nordic is there for you no matter where you are in your ERP journey, and we encourage you to reach out to one of our solution executives via our website, or you can always shoot me, Molly, an email, and I can get you in touch with someone as well. So next, we'll cover a quick disclaimer, and then we will move into today's presentation. So the material in this presentation is in reference to Infor Cloud Suite and is for informational purposes only. We just want to provide you with consideration as you make the best decision for your organization. Reliance on the information presented without consultation is at your own risk. We highly recommend that you contact Nordic to discuss how solutions can be tailored specifically to your needs. So with that, I will turn it over to today's presenter, Diane Street, and who is a solutions architect for our finance team.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, I think is what we did there. My name is Diane Street, and I have been in the Infor stream now for 15 years plus. So I have been able to watch many versions go by, and I am very excited about the FSM version. I thoroughly enjoy working with this. I was in operations previously in the earlier versions, so I just love how this version works and the opportunities that the functional team members now have. So given that concept, we want to interest you in an FSM implementation, but even more than that, we want to help you get ready for the implementation, specifically on the finance side. We find that in finance, we can delay the other teams in their process because finance decisions haven't been made. So we're trying to get in front of that. And as a solution architect, coming into different projects and having these discussions with different clients, I can share with you some of the conversations and the topics and the focus that we've had previously, and give you some insight across the different applications regarding where you can get in front of the implementation. So by the time your partner has feet on the ground, you're organized. You have some of your decisions in place. You have an idea of your vision. You know where you want to go. And all of that is so helpful to your implementation team. Every time that you don't need to step away for an internal conversation and an internal decision, it is such a win for the implementation process. So we're going to work towards that a little bit as we move along here. It's going to be fast and furious, but I think you'll get an idea of the ideas and what we're referring to. So at the end of the day, truly in an implementation, what is our end goal? We are stepping into sports season here. So um, reporting, and I do have reporting capitalized and on purpose. We are trying to effectively manage our business, manage the processes within the business, and be able to report correctly and successfully at the other end. So reporting is of primary importance, and you will hear me mention reporting throughout the process. We also want to improve our efficiencies, our effectiveness, our KPIs, right? We want to be effective for our company. So there are opportunities in the system. Let's take advantage of those. We also want to make better decisions. So improved analysis and decision making. Um, we have a faster turnaround on our data. Our data is available sooner. I come from the old days when the reporting data was significantly behind and the decisions got held up, and we didn't know uh, our data points. Let me put it that way. We didn't know our data points timely enough to make the decisions as quickly as we wanted to. And of course, we're always moving towards the streamlined processing when we are talking this efficiency and effectiveness. At the end of the day, the primary end goal is that your company has the best solution for you. And we initially started based on the Infor industry standards, but then we have to play into your company's needs. What are your requirements? What are your policies? Your resources, the volume of resources, right? All of that factors into making the best solution for you. So that is our driver as we step into an implementation process. So these are some of the key considerations that I would like to go over with you. And again, we're talking reporting. I want to address the organizational structure, mention key personnel, and dive into application insights and give a little bit of insight. Um, Application by application, I guess, as it were, and then hopefully avoiding future pain points and workarounds that are currently required, right? And then a couple of little tidbits at the end. So stepping into reporting. Okay, so first day we hit the ground, we're going to say, okay, what reports are important to you? And we need you to consider across the board, across all work streams, the government, the industry, your board requirements, your managerial reporting, right? Whether you're reporting externally or internally. Um, so we like that information gathered. I have been places where they've had 1,700 reports that they've had to cull through, but they also understood they no longer needed 1,700 reports. So this is the time to get your reporting organized, create a consistency towards it. Decide what is required, what must you absolutely have, and what format must that be in? What would you like to have. The general term for this is the Moscow, the must have, should have, could have, want to have, or would have kind of thing. Um, Currently, what data are you having to cobble together from different places? Keep that in mind. From different corners, you have to bring this data together to make a report, because we want to help you bring those sources in as well. And when you're cobbling, is the information in the system? uh, or which system even, and does the company need it to be available? And then reporting outside of the system. When you're doing that, what is going to be your source of truth? We always encourage FSM to be the source of truth and get the source of your detail within FSM. That is creating a consistency for you. That is creating that single source that your relevant end users have access to, and there's no variations to that concept. So as an example, it is kind of small, but I think you can read it. This is an example of a reporting inventory worksheet that I kind of put together. Um, I like to know the report name, the department, the owner, and then we step into the level of requirements. This helps you organize your priorities and your reporting, and it helps your implementation team as well. What reports are required? What would we like to have? What don't we have currently and we just need to have? And that's that cobbling together, right, that I was talking about. So think about that. And the opportunity becomes, when we get this inventory, we can turn around and say, well, we can do that in a list view. What kind of presentation does this report require? So the terminology, the word report changes. Report no longer means a piece of paper that one person is handing to another. We now have reporting within the system with our list views and what is available online and presenting immediately, as opposed to what has to be printed off. So that is why I ask the type of report. Is it an internal report? Somebody just needs to know the detail. Is it an external report, like it's going to the bank or the board, and that is pixel perfect and needs a nicer presentation? Any of this information provided at the beginning is such an advantage for the client. And then that allows us the opportunity to come in and say, well, given the presentation of this report, we're going to have to customize. So that gets it on the list quickly for our functional and technical teams. So something to think about as you move forward. And we do ask and recommend that you have copies of reports. So as you get closer and closer to your implementation timeframe, if you have your end users printing off 2 copies of their reports, right? One for the pile for the implementation that they can scan and get into the system, and one to use in their daily job. These are just suggestions that we have moving forward. Um, but again, trying to keep reporting primary. And moving into organizational structure. Moving along. So again, as you can see in my second bullet, we're still talking about reporting requirements, right? How does your organization need to report? So that is a step in there. We want you to consider growth. I've only had one client ever say, "Oh, we're not planning on growing anymore." So we want you to think growth and think acquisitions, and make sure that is part of your perception, part of your vision. We certainly don't want the system to confine you in any way. The next thing, organization wise, is we want you to think about your different verticals within it. If I use healthcare as an example, normally the verticals run along the lines of providers and clinics, hospitals, foundations. understand the needs of each of those businesses and their reporting requirements as you step into this process. And then you have this opportunity. Now is the time. If you've been working independently as companies, do you want to move it to global? Do you want to have an all-encompassing global company, a shared services and oversight, an opportunity to consolidate some of that activity and create efficiencies that way? If you have three companies doing AP and three companies doing payroll and et cetera, and you can functionally tilt that so that um, one person is running across all three companies for AP, and it's not one person, but the concept of you're increasing and working towards that efficiency and effectiveness that we're talking about, right? So again, when you're thinking structure, we want you to start at the top, that global concept, but we want you to level it all the way down as well. So in FSM, we have additional opportunities, right? You normally have your generic company department account. We have dimensions. We have this availability to pull in other information. And let me use locations as an example. So think about locations coming in as part of a driver of some of your reporting. So how does that work in your total structure? How does that work in your reporting? What does that do to your departments? What does that do to your chart of accounts? Can you skinny down your chart of accounts if you pull location out of that and make it a top level dimension? Does that reduce your departments and make your departments a cleaner and tighter presentation? Does that kind of kill some of the bloat in your chart of accounts if you can pull location out instead of having to say location Maine and location Pennsylvania and location New York, that type of thing? So think across the organization globally all the way down, and then make sure you roll it back up and that those hierarchies are working for you, leaving the door open there. Next, we are going to talk, you've heard me mention these words already a couple times, efficiency and effectiveness. So our goal is to turn around our data faster and in a more in a quicker response with a quicker response. What are the roadblocks? What slows this process down? This is, again, you heard me say it previously, this is a great time to review your processes, evaluate your policies, go through these and understand. And honestly, and you're going to hear it again, document these processes, document these policies so that everybody is on the same page. It is very difficult when we come in and on the finance side, we understand the policy is this, but on the HR side or the SCN side, they have a different perception, right? It's so helpful if all of this is documented and identified and reviewed. Where can you flex with your policy and process? Where is there some give or take? What would you like to give up moving forward, right? What can we get rid of? Those are all the kind of questions that if you can ask internally prior to the implementation team getting there, that's going to be advantageous. And as we work through this process of this efficiency and effectiveness, what we normally see is many little, like an octopus, many little systems and platforms that reside with the main system, legacy system, the main legacy system. And these octopus arms and legs, they have a function, but that function may actually reside in FSM as well. So evaluate whether you're willing to give up that other platform and bring it into FSM. And this relates back to that idea of having FSM be the source of your information. That consistency, building towards that protocol of having FSM feed your information. So, as we work towards the native opportunities in FSM, we're talking about the approvals. We're talking about the simple uploads, which create an efficiency for your end users. So, no longer doing data entry. There, we can automate. We can do these uploads. Another example is the bank file coming in, previous day activity that they're not having to check off, um, check by check as a recon item, for example. So let's evaluate the native opportunities in FSM, and let's see what are conflicts with our current policies. Another example with the policies I usually like to give is NAP invoices are usually approved, right? And very often payments have to be approved as well. We can do that in FSM. We can do that. But again, this is that concept. If payments over 50,000 have to be approved, and I have 5 invoices that have been approved at 11,000, they've already been approved. Is it really necessary to approve the payment itself as well? And I will tell you, some clients will say yes, and some clients will say, oh, I get it. No, we're not challenging that decision. We're just asking for that review in advance so that you understand what that means in the system. So that's an additional build, an approval for invoices, an approval for the cash payment, that type of thing. So again, the things to think about. There we go, things to think about. So the other piece of the thought process is, what operating data are we interested in that could port along with the financial information? So again, one of the ones I mentioned earlier was location. Location's an example. We almost always know our location information as a transaction. We on supply chain side, on HR side, where they're working, supply chain side, where they're shipping it to, on the finance side, who's paying the bill. That's a common one. So things to think about as we craft our expectations for FSM is, again, what information is valuable. So using location as an example, um, is that valuable to have that at the top level? If we could get P&Ls by location, what would that do for us? So again, if I use healthcare as an example, and I have 2 surgery centers, and I can evaluate a P&L at one surgery center, and they're doing outstanding, and I evaluate the surgery center at another location, and it doesn't get used as efficiently as it could. Would that not be valuable information as we talk about, and we're going to step into, right, decision making? Wouldn't it be a better idea to understand and use that second location for something else and move the surgery information over? Just as an example, we are not here to make the decisions. We're here to open the doors so you can have those discussions regarding those decisions. So we want you to look at what kind of reporting and how far down you want to take it. So again, the P&Ls are an example for providers, for clinics. What does that do for you? If we had providers and clinics brought up to the top level of as a dimension, and now you're able to quickly grab a P&L for a provider, or quickly grab a P&L for a clinic, or both, a provider within a clinic. That has value. That has value. So when we're looking at that, look at your chart of accounts and evaluate where repetitive information is happening. And would that be valuable for you to elevate it a level? And that goes for the chart of accounts, that goes for departments across those fields. Consider how you can manage that information. And what that does for you is allow those slicing and dicing of data. You're able to slice and dice differently because that data isn't cobbled with anything else, tied to anything else within the chart. So one of the other aspects that we want you to be aware of is the user fields and references that we can identify. Sometimes this information is valuable, but it doesn't need to be a dimension. So keep that in mind as well. You may want to track some specific piece of data regarding a transactional record, and you can do this via the user fields as well. So the bottom line is truly what is being managed outside the statement, outside the system, either in other systems themselves or maybe in Excel, right? You download into Excel and then you need to do all this manipulation. Maybe there's something else that we can do for you within FSM to help you. And there we go. We're moving into that improved analysis and decision making, right? FSM can help you with this piece of the process. So, one of the bigger notes that I want to identify is moving towards the real time analysis. Um, it's real time or almost real time. Some of that depends on the company's processes and how repetitive they want to be with some of their updates and etc. The biggest thing to understand is you no longer need to wait until month end. If we're scheduling activities to update nightly in the middle of the night or timely during the course of the day, that information becomes available to your managerial team sooner. They can respond faster. They can shut a problem down quicker. All those opportunities come into play when that analysis can be done more timely. And so again, when we talk about that analysis, those additional metrics that we're bringing in, we want to evaluate that along with our information. So here I'm making the note about the slicing and dicing down to the details because we're able to keep these fields separated and unique, either via decisions or cleaning up of departments and cleaning up of accounts. You're able to tackle that information coming in from any angle and getting a much better picture of the specific detail that you're aligned to, as it were. The drilling down into the source of information, because if you make FSM the source, you have that source information available. So when information is interfaced in, right, we're losing that initial source. We bring in as much information as we can with that interface, but still it's not the original source. So across the board, the biggest component is really understanding your organization structure and the reporting that you want to align to it. And if you can make that your focus in advance, you are helping the implementation process. I just can't even begin to exponentially. Let me put it that way. I always beg for the finance team to be able to meet first because we want to evaluate and make sure you're comfortable with your chart of accounts and departments and your organization structure, the very pieces that we've been talking about. But while we're trying to make those decisions, the other work streams are trying to move forward with their decisions and build. And think about it. If we want to change our departments, well, what does that mean to the rest of the company? We need to follow up with the operating. We need to follow up with the people on the floor. How about benchmarking? How about decision making? Um, our time and attendance. Is this going to work for time and attendance? Are we able to tilt that? All of these questions, if we can get that organized at the front end, saves countless hours during the implementation itself. So that's my I'll get off my box. I have some we're going to look at application insights here and just some suggestions moving forward as far as what we can think about moving forward. So I'm starting with record to report, and encompassed in record to report is your global ledger, it's allocations, it's budgeting, it's a piece of projects. Um, Getting in front of that information. Again, I have reporting requirements and organizational structure top level. So you heard the kind of questions that I like to come in and ask. This is our opportunity. Technically, even if you're in a Lawson system, it is a conversion to FSM. So we do have the opportunity to change things up, things that um, processes or structure or build or anything that's been going on with legacy that isn't quite right. We have that opportunity to update that and correct it. So let's take advantage of this. I always say the world is your oyster, and let's start with asking for the world, and then reality will set in. Some things the system won't be able to do, and some things the client policy or requirements won't accommodate, but that's okay. That's how we find that best solution. But those are good discussions to have. And by virtue of having them, we, as your implementation partner, have done our due diligence trying to make sure you've opened the door and you're thinking outside of the box, and you've done your part trying to assess and evaluate. Is this necessary for our policy? Do we have to have this policy? Those are all valuable discussions to have. So things to think about as we step in is, again, reporting an organization. We always like to understand what you want to do with your history, and this relates to AP as well as the GL balances, right? But as soon as we talk about how many years do you want to bring in, it's what are you going to do with your legacy? That is the immediate panic with your end users. How are you going to manage that? So it becomes as security, confidence, maybe a relief if they understand how the legacy is going to be managed, where it's going to be archived, and how long they'll have access to it, or how much is coming into FSM, and how that will be managed. So any insight to that concept for your end users at the beginning is valuable. You've heard me mention the chart of accounts cleanse before, um, regarding dimensions, what can be pulled out and elevated a level, and again, hierarchies. Um, we've run across clients with multiple charts of accounts that they struggle to consolidate. We can do that very, very easily in FSM, actually. We do like to create and one's required, an enterprise default, as it were. And I usually ask for the consolidated one to be that enterprise one. But if you want to build different roll-ups and have different focuses on your chart of accounts, you can. We can get in front of that. Again, Think about that. What would you like to see? Well, sometimes I like to report like this, and sometimes I like to report like that. Okay, pick one as your default, and then the other one's available as well. Both of those can be aligned in the system. Same thing for departments. We want you to evaluate them, clean them up, but what are the opportunities for reporting to slice and dice them differently? And again, with departments, you can do anything. You can tie them out to locations. You can tie them out to service lines or business units. Um, there's many ways to roll up the hierarchies, and you will find the most valuable one for you. You've heard me say countless times, revisit your business policies. So I absolutely put that on the list running through. I do want to mention structure relations because that's Infor terminology, and it actually means I have listed restrictions here. But if you're not going to do a global concept of every department being available to every company, then this structure relations opportunity will assist you. And you can identify certain types of restrictions. So that's something to think about. If you only want this company to have access to these certain departments or these certain accounts, this is where that comes into play. So if you have had your discussions in advance, the sooner we can take a look at that in the system, right? Allocations. I love the allocations in the system. If the system can see the logic, the system can do the allocation for you. So if you're doing any allocations outside the system, if you're having to go into Excel, download information, calculate, manipulate, and then evaluate, and then send back up, let's do it in the system. This is, again, one of those opportunities. Let's work smart and not have your end users doing all that Excel manipulation when they can manage it in allocations. So if you're doing allocations, evaluate the logic, look at it. Can the system see that information? If the answer is no, can the system see that information if we bring this metric into the system? And there's ways to bring that metric in, right? Either by account or by dimension as examples. So things to think about. Moving on to security. Do you want, I had previously talked about my functional person. Do you want that functional person to see all the companies? Or is that functional person only expected to see one company? You don't want them to have access. So clarity around how you want to manage your security moving forward is valuable. It'll any of those discussions that you have about that in advance will be valuable for the implementation team stepping in. And then across the system, we have multiple opportunities for approvals. So we're trying to shut down the paper approvals, as it were, right? So in this area, we have the opportunity for journal entry approvals, recurring journal entries, approvals. Those can be managed. Certain project approval information can be managed. We can turn on approvals when somebody wants to request a new department or a new account. Those can be approved. The approvals can be by a team or by a single person or by levels. You can have levels as well. So think about how you want to manage that activity. Do you want approvals for journal entries? If you do, is there a threshold? Do you want to ignore all journal entries under $1,000? Allow those to automatically release. Anything over 1,000 needs to have an approval. Those are concepts to consider. We can do whatever you want in that range. The final note here is interfaces. We'll have lots of interfaces coming in, probably lots of interfaces going out. So we want to evaluate. If it's the current interface, we want it on the list, right? Is it an interface for one of those systems that we might be able to sunset? Okay, we still want it on the list so that our due diligence says we talked about it. And yes, we can sunset it because that information can reside in the system now. So to get a log of your interfaces and get the specs for your interfaces ready so that those specs can be tilted, tilted as it were, to come over to the FSM. Technically, it's usually one side or the other doesn't need to be touched. If you're inbound going out, the out doesn't change. We just need to organize the FSM side of it. And if it's coming inbound, then we need to understand um, what fields we want it to go to in FSM. So again, any of this that you do in advance is just such a wonderful treat. It's a gift. It's a gift to the implementation team. Moving on to source to settle. And I do just have a couple more here. Source to settle, vendor master cleanse, absolutely a priority. Now is the time to inactivate vendors you're not using. If you know vendors should be merged, let's get them taken care of. Let's take a look at our naming conventions and our coding decisions. And if you have 8,000 vendors at this time. Let's say you have 8,000 vendors. Let's talk about you moving your vendor coding starting to the number 10,000 so that we have a consistency in our characters. I am a big advocate of departments and accounts and vendor coding and etc. all having consistent characters. It is so valuable in interfacing and when we're dropping into Excel and that kind of thing. Things to consider that way. Um, know your PO vendors from your basic vendors. And I mentioned that from history. Let me put it that way. That is the voice of experience. Just understand who your vendors are and what role they play in your system. We usually encourage the 2 years coming in of active vendors, and it does play into your history expectations for AP. So that does waffle at times. But again, you see the total picture here. Thinking about how you want to manage add-on charges, thinking about how you want to manage your taxes if you're a taxable company. Chargebacks policy is always a big one. Um, and it is actually more or less set up on the finance side, but it's also driven by the SCM side as well. So source to settle is very collaborative. When I talk to vendor master cleanse on the SCM side, we always recommend an item master cleanse, excuse me. Um, build to those consistencies and those cleanup points. Again, the chargeback policy is should be collaborative, whether you want to engage or not. And you're always more than welcome to take a look at these initially and see if it works for you. There's a little waffle room in there to evaluate something during the initial testing phases and then decide whether that's a good opportunity for you or not. Things are not always locked down, within the first round of testing. There are opportunities to, if you feel like you've hit a brick wall and that's not successful, then let's make a right turn and see how that works for you. Matching tolerances is the same thing. Very collaborative. The tighter the tolerance, the more SCM sees buyer messages. And is that where we want them to spend their time? So we have to evaluate our resources, their skill set, and the amount of money it costs a resource to complete a 10 cent buyer message. Is that where you want them to invest their time? So again, coming into the system, this is a good time to evaluate that kind of information. Moving on to approval levels and thresholds. Do you want the same approval levels for the SCM side as well as finance? Are they in sync? If so, FSM can now accommodate that. If not, there's the independence works as well. Both styles are still available in FSM. Um, but take a look at your approval levels and thresholds. Have these discussions first so that there is an understanding, so that all teams understand, and the when the implementation team walks in, they know what you expect in this range. That's helpful. Let me tell you, it's very helpful. Interface is the same comment. If you have vendors coming in, understand if that's going to continue, or you're going to take a different approach to loading your vendors or loading your invoices. Third-party activity, right? Understand what you want to move forward with. And I mentioned third party down the road here in just a minute, a little bit. IDM templates, we also have those available in this area. So check printing is an example. Your PO invoices, sorry, PO delivery is an example, and check printing on the finance side. So understand whether you want to engage with IDM or not, and moving that information forward. Stepping over to billing and collection, same thing here. We're talking customers, cleaning them out, finding your sources of revenue. It's always interesting when you come in and you say, well, where does your money come from? Where are the funds and your deposits in your bank account? Well, okay, kind of here and here and here, but think about your education. Think if you're selling certain licenses or fees, or you're selling materials, that type of thing. Understand that type of information, because we can help you organize that and group it together. We now have opportunities in the system to just bill simply through receivables. We can get fancier with billing and revenue, and then we have project invoicing as well. And project invoicing incorporates contracts. So that's picking up your grants funding sources. And there's a specific build to that, but we can help you invoice your funding sources, or document your recognized income coming in from those sources. So that's available in the system. And again, we have IDM templates. Our receivable and project invoicing invoices are available as templates in the system. Approvals continue in the system in different areas of it. In projects, request a new project could require a new approval if you're interested in it. And of course, the interface is coming through. And cash processing. Short and sweet. Know your banks, know your branches, know your accounts, and what ones you want to bring into FSM. Most clients bring in their operating and their depository disbursements, those type of accounts. You can choose to bring in your investments or not. That depends on you, and whether you want to address it in the setup. Even if interest income is coming in quarterly or something like that, it may still be valuable for you to have it in the system, and tracking and logging it that way instead of off the system. So things to consider. Keep in mind that way. Check printing, I've mentioned. Reconciliations, your previous day activity coming into the system. Do you want to do that? I will tell you, as we kick off an implementation, our focus for cash is truly supporting accounts receivable and accounts payable. We want to make sure that the cash takes care of those. Patient refunds, that type of thing. We want to make sure all that is accounted for as a priority, but then we do step into the cash treasury opportunity. And again, we have templates available over on this side, and approvals. You heard me mention cash payment approvals. There are significant I want to say 6 to 8 types of cash ledger activity or transactional activity that the system could see that could require approvals if you decide. Same rules with interfacing, right? Again, if I take healthcare as the example, um, we have patient refunds coming in through cash, and we want to make sure we we manage that information correctly from the beginning to the end, which is truly a total circle. So from whatever your billing system is into FSM, writing the check, getting the account paid, and returning that information back to the billing. So paying attention to that information. And the final one here is asset creation. So one of the biggest questions I step into is the way I'm going to say it. I step into it is how do they want to handle disposed assets? Um, uh, so in all honesty, we like to bring in cleaned asset register into FSM. So disposed assets really are no longer necessary, but we have to make sure we create a documented flow from your legacy asset register to the FSM asset register. So if you're disposing of assets and you don't want to bring them into FSM, we need to make sure we create a clear path, a clear documented path, so that internal auditing and external auditing can understand when we had $10,000 worth of assets over here, and now we only have 1,000 in FSM. What happened here? So just making sure we document and keep our activity clean, depreciation calculations and depreciation decisions. We often find as different companies come together, they're using different methods, they're using different conventions. So we want you to evaluate and move towards a consistent protocol as we drop the assets into FSM. We have approval opportunities. An asset can not be released into the system until it is approved, as an example. Um, we do recommend projects being used for assets. So um, even if an asset's $1,000, or a single invoice asset, we do still encourage the practice of running across projects and capitalizing from the project process. Infor built a very I think it's a very good process. I like all of them, but it's a very clean process of your asset activity and your CIP process of moving through the system within projects. And when you're ready, bringing it over into the asset accounting application. So I always encourage that concept. Moving forward to avoid future pain points, want to really emphasize change management. Open that door. Think outside the box. Consider all the opportunities. Like I said, ask for everything. Think about everything, and could we make that work? You would be surprised at how many times the answer ends up being a yes. Sometimes with a little work, sometimes with a little more work, but it's a yes. So consider it. We encourage communications on the client side. Um, to keep all end users, not just the implementation team and not just the steering committee, but keeping all end users in the know so that they understand timing, so that they understand what you're moving towards. I would give them updates in meetings, so that they know what you're dealing with, they know where you're at. I would let them know when you're going into testing sessions. They get very involved with the UAT ones, but anything prior to that, let them know the go live plans. Additionally, engage with your end users regarding daily tasks. Again, I'm going to say we have people that do make decisions that aren't doing the tasks, and there is a disconnect. That's the way to say it. So make sure the people involved with the implementation also understand the processes and the daily tasks and those requirements coming back and forth, because it happens where decisions get made without understanding the tasks behind them, and then we everybody has to circle back around, and it's going to happen to a certain extent anyway, not challenging that in the least, but anything you can do to help that, understanding what the end users are doing. Invariably when we bring the end users in and we say, here's your process, and they say, well, that isn't what we do. That requires a little rework for the next time around. So please be sure to ask your end user questions, find out how they do process and how they accomplish their desk jobs, and what are their pain points and their workarounds, so that we can avoid them going down the path and embrace change. I can't say it any bigger than it says here, because that is very important. When we hear this is how we do it, or this is what I have to have because this is how I do it today, um, we want everybody to be able to think, well, if you have it in this format, will that work for you? And so we want all those considerations to be put in place, right? Yes, that format may work. Final note to everything on this piece is that documentation of your current business processes. Please understand what they are as we move into FSM. Because if you don't understand the current processes, it makes it more difficult. We know what the system can do, but the system has flexibility. It has different ways to do things. So let's think about those different ways and what is the best way. Again, what is the best solution for you? And the final piece, other collaborations. Whoops. We're okay here. Just one moment here. Okay. The internal communications, as I said, I really encourage keeping the whole company in the know, either by updating meetings, notes on the internet, elevator speeches, emails, however you can help keep them engaged with the process. The calendars, make sure they understand and know what's coming up or where we're at in the process. And the external communications. I talk about vendors specifically here. A lot of times, I encourage clients to reach out to vendors prior to go live and just say, we are going live with a new system. Could we have a more lenient payment term for the next 3 months or 6 months? So if you've been net due of 30 days kind of thing, maybe they'll give you 45 days or 60 days. And anything like that is helpful to release and calm the overwhelming stress that everybody will have at go live, because we will. It's a given. So what can we do to help calm that level? What can we do as far as expectations with the requirements of the system and our end users moving forward? And third party collaborations, your banking partners, your printing partners, whether it's check printing or 1099 printing, whatever systems, if you're using external systems for budgeting, for reporting, all of those, the more you communicate with them, again, the earlier you communicate with them and find out their lead time and can they help you with testing and etc. All of that is helpful. And on that note, I need to turn it back to Molly and give her 1 minute. Sorry, Molly.
No, no worries. That was so much great information, a lot to process, I'm sure. But if you guys have any questions, please feel free to come off mute and ask. We only have a minute left, but
I know, I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. Or you can throw them in the chat if you're shy. Just give a few minutes for that. And while you're thinking of that, I will go forward with the rest of mine. If you do have questions later after processing all of this fabulous information, we do have our Coffee with Consultants offering. That allows you 30 minutes of complimentary time with one of our consultants to get questions answered or even solve pain points. So you can go to our website and sign up for that, or as always, you can get in touch with me, and my email is in the chat, and I'll get you pointed in the right direction.
Yep, sorry, I went the wrong way.
No worries. Hope that you've enjoyed this month's Informative Friday series. Our next one will be in October. If you missed any this month, they are out on our YouTube channel. And I will, of course, send this recording out to you guys today. And then last but not least, we will be at the Western Infor user group here at the end of September. So if you happen to be going to that, please stop by and see some of our solution executives that will be there. We'd be happy to get the chance to talk to you in person and see your face. So that's all I have. Any questions before we sign off? All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Thank you, Diane, for a great presentation. And everybody enjoy your holiday weekend.
Thank you. Have good days.